Welcome to the Life Curation Podcast. I'm your host, Andrina Tisi. Together, we will explore thoughts, inspirations, and conversations that feed our soul, spark the mind, and nourish the body. Thank you so much for being here to learn and grow, and for walking this journey called life with me. Hi, my dears. Welcome back, or welcome to the first time, maybe, to the Life Curation Podcast. I'm thrilled and honored that you are here and listening in. Today, I'm super stoked to share a conversation I had with Remington Donovan from the Mystical Arts. And I met Remington 2 years ago during the Rama Festival in Mallorca. During that time, I had a personal reading with him, which has hugely influenced and impacted my life. And I actually just listened to it again a couple of months ago, and again and still got so many nuggets and good things out of it. So Remington is a numerologist, a qabalistic tarot reader, seer, and teacher of kundalini yoga, and he lives in Los Angeles, California. He has so much and deep knowledge and wisdom, and at the beginning of our conversation, he explains how they are very connected. So for us, or for me, it really looks like there's so many different things, but the beauty of it is he draws them all together, which is also very much in line with Life Curation, because Life Curation does that as well. We talked about 2021, which is a 5-year, and what that means. He shares some of the ways we can incorporate these teachings into our daily life and approach it playfully and a great awareness. You will feel his passion and the sense of curiosity he has about all these teachings, as well as the lightness and the humor that he brings to it. Remington was born into the tradition of Swami Satchidananda, learning meditation and yoga directly from him at a very, very early age. He began formal training in the Western mystery tradition as a teenager, studying under the Adept Master for 22 years, practicing the Hermetic Kabbalistic wisdom of the ancient. He uses these technologies and talents to empower, inspire, and guide individuals in private readings and group sessions locally and worldwide. And he has some amazing resources and recordings also on his website, which of course we will link to in the show notes. But now, with no further ado, let's hop over to our conversation. So Remington, it's so nice to have you on the Life Curation Podcast. Thank you for being here, and it's really good to see you after 2 years.
Wonderful to be here, and yeah, I was so confused. I was like, was it 2 years? Was it a year? Like, the vortex of the quarantine, especially for Los Angeles. We've had we were one of the strictest places, at least in the United States, so we've seen a lot of our one-bedroom apartment.
Like a leap year, almost.
Totally. It's just a fog. Like, my sense of time is totally thrown off now.
Completely. So let me hit you with 5 this or that to just get the flow going, even though we've already been chatting for like 10 minutes. But
okay, yeah, we better jump in.
Exactly. So sunrise or sunset?
Ooh, sunrise.
Basil or parsley?
Basil. How is that even? Not, yeah, basil. What?
Why parsley, really? Coffee or tea?
What? Coffee?
Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings?
Oh, Lord of the Rings.
Obviously.
I'm old. Well, it's my age.
Mountains or ocean?
Mountains.
And you live in
Even though we plan on going to the beach today.
Yeah, exactly.
But I love mountains. Like, that's actually when I look at pictures of Switzerland, I'm looking at like the mountains, and it looks like an enchanted land where everyone's like a magical elf or fairy in my head, and like I just want to prance around and pick fresh basil up in the mountains.
And
But
that's
I'll
why
leave the parsley.
and that's why you love Lord of the Rings.
Well, Lord of the Rings to me, I mean, is epic. Probably two by the time like Harry Potter came out. I still those are all like to me like kids books that I actually was kind of interested when they first when the first Harry Potter came out, and I saw this phenomenon. It was this huge sensation, and kids are talking about like magic. For a minute, I thought, oh, maybe it would get people interested in deeper spiritual hermetic magic and the things that I do. But I can't say that I, in some ways, really noticed anything. But at the same token, I feel a lot of this work is becoming really popular and I don't know mainstream, but it's definitely out there. Between astrology and numerology and those types of things. But I don't really want to give Harry Potter the credit for that.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. But yeah, that's a really good intro already, because you combine so many different things, from tarot to astrology to numerology, mysticism, Kabbalah, kundalini yoga. And like, I was just thinking when I was watching the replay of your solstice workshop, which was amazing, by the way, so thank you.
Oh, thank you.
And I was just like, how does he know all these things? But I'm just this shall remain a mystery. But how do all these things, like, they complement each other, and they must have like some certain things in common. So maybe you can take us a little bit on a journey on that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's funny because people think that I know all this stuff, and I guess for me, not that I take it for granted, but I don't think that I do. It actually took me a while to start teaching because I was like, it's all common knowledge, right? But I would really what I could attribute it to is just partly years of working with it. So
Yes.
I definitely had an upbringing that I talk about a fair amount, just growing up on a spiritual community and an ashram and learning a lot about spirituality and being exposed to a lot of different spiritual traditions and religions. And so I feel like I retained a lot of that, but a lot of what we could call, say, hermetic magic or the Western mystery schools, or sometimes it's called ceremonial magic. And under that framework is, Rosicrucian, mystical Kabbalah, and then within that is numerology, astrology, tarot, etc. And the thing is, it's not that hard in a way, because once you start to decipher mystical Kabbalah, the way I was taught it, which is mystical Kabbalah spelled with a Q. There's little different lineages of Kabbalah. There's Kabbalah K, definitely a little more influenced, like more Judaism influenced in my experience. There's actually Kabbalah with a C, which is actually Christian Kabbalah. A lot of people don't know about that. And then there's Kabbalah with a Q, which is how I learned it, which is in this sort of loose heading. Let's call it ceremonial magic or magic with a K. And the reason it's just is spelled with a K is to differentiate it from stage magic. Like David Copperfield, or there was like, why am I going blank on professional stage magicians? Doug Henning, but nobody listening probably knows who that was. He was like a big one in the 70s and 80s. But, anyhow, so that spiritual tradition within that learning mystical Kabbalah, it gives you the experience and it gives you the practice to really connect the dots, which is what you're kind of saying. Like, how do I know all this? Or I pull all of these things. And that's really like kind of this master key, and it's sort of a system of all systems. And when you it's like your translation code, it's like a translation app, right? So if you were speaking to me in a different language, you probably speak like 9 languages because of where you're from. But which totally fascinates me. But that root base, you start to see, especially with tarot, how the tarot to Hebrew letters to numerology. So you take like a tarot card, like, you know, let's think of a good one. All right, the Magus card. Well, that's number 1 in the tarot, but the Magus card is Mercury in astrology. So then you start to connect those dots. Okay, Mercury rules, you know, the Gemini and Virgo, for example. And then also Mercury on the tree of life is something called HUD, HD, that translates as like brilliance and splendor. And so you kind of learn those basic ideas. Mercury is communication, it's intelligence, it's brain function. And then it's the Magus card. The Magus card is card number 1, but the Hebrew letter attributed to it is a letter called Beth. And that has a numerical value of 2, and that means a house. So right there, that's like just a little where it seems like maybe I'm going all over the place, but that one tarot card, for example, starts to tell a greater story. So you kind of just expand out. It's almost as if it were a little computer program, and you like click on it, and then a bunch of, or clicking on a website, and then you have all these other options pop up, you know, your home screen, about, gallery. So, you know, obviously it's years of working with it, but the dot, it's really rooted in that mystical Kabbalah. And then when you kind of start working in that language and that sort of dot connecting, you can easily maneuver between different ideas, spirituality, spiritual systems, ideas, concepts, things like that, philosophies, and see a bigger picture because you're able to take away the outside sort of apparel or the cultural oops, sorry, my watch is going crazy, or a cultural language around it, and you just get to the root. So that's why I always say, like, any system of divination, which could be tarot, which could be astrology, which could be I Ching, which could be pyromancy, it could be something called geomancy, bibliomancy, the lists go on. I could pretty much do every single one. There are some I may have to learn the actual technique, but the interpretations I can interpret because of this practice, of this method, of this sort of master key or universal translation. And all of that's really the practice, or that's one, all of that is magic, but that's just one facet of magic.
Yeah.
It makes it easy because then I can talk about it. And so when I do workshops, I can just help sort of decode these numbers and stuff. And then there's like a deeper message, and that's where it goes deeper than just astrology or just numerology or just tarot. And so there's a really cool spider web, and I feel like it's the language of the universe, and it's a way the universe is always speaking to us, and it's speaking to it through so many different, whether it's visual codes, smells, feelings, etc., etc. And so with that practice, just gives me the ability to certain level decode that secret and hidden language, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it absolutely actually does. And it's fascinating because I also think then it's really beautiful how then we see also similarities in different technologies and different wisdoms of different traditions. And at the end, they come almost together, or you bring them together, and also seeing that we can take different knowledge from different areas and still bring them together.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think being able to bridge the gap, and I definitely see stuff just being in this world of sort of spiritual practitioners, and I call it like the new age hodgepodge, where people just take little pieces of things they like and are drawn to and are attracted to. And I think that's totally fine. But I'm definitely laying out, there's certain specifics. I have found though that the yogas and so much of the Eastern teachings, ancient Egypt, and then the magical teachings really are, it's all sort of from the same source. Like it's the same sort of mystery school source. There's so many traditions that were kept secret for years, years, I mean like thousands and thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah.
And they all really are coming from the same place. That just that sort of that energy moved into different cultures over time.
Yeah.
You know, like so if I had the opportunity to study with other teachers or things like that, so but I am sharing what I've authentically practiced, have learned, and I've had teachers in. So I'm not like, there's definitely a lot of made up hodgepodge out there for sure. Especially, I live in Los Angeles, so it's like hodgepodge, new age
Headquarter.
crazy central. Yeah, it's totally the central ground zero. Like I'll see flyers for everything imaginable, like fifth dimensional quantum Zoroastrian shamanic healing journeys with yoga trance, like all in like one thing. But if it's helping someone explore their way, and that's what I do really encourage people. Sometimes people, they don't know maybe what is your path as an individual, or people are searching. And I always say, just start exploring things you like. And when you sort of activate that energy, the things and the practices you're really meant to learn are going to start finding you. I started with what I was born into, but I utilize that, but I don't consider that like my path.
Yeah.
That sort of helped open the way for me to find what I wanted. I'm always impressed with people that grow up in what I call more sort of normal backgrounds, or they weren't exposed to spirituality or anything esoteric, tarot or meditation and things like that, and then just found it without and really got into it. That impresses me. I was already exposed to this stuff, so it doesn't seem as interesting to me. I was like, oh yeah, cool. I'm already very open and aware and was being taught a lot of these principles. But I love the way it merges, and really at the end of the day, I'm sharing the stuff that I love and have worked with, and I work with it because I love it.
Yeah. So 2021 is a 5-year, and we pretty much exactly hit like halfway point.
I guess we're about to, we are at the time of recording this, we are it's half done. So we still have half a year to get our shit together.
Yeah, totally. So looking back a little bit, what has happened, from all, the wisdoms you're pulling together, and what is in store for us in the next 6 months? Like, what do you see? Like, maybe obviously numerology, astrology, like just what, and of course that could be very long and deep, but just like share what you feel is important to you.
Well, I look at the numerology for the year, which is, I like that because it's kind of simple and it's like one pointed. The astrology changes about every 4 minutes because of the moon, the speed of the moon, like little differences. So the astrology is just a constant upkeep. It's like reading the daily news or whatever. But with the numerology, it gives us not only an insight, it becomes kind of predictive, but it's more about what are the spiritual lessons for you as an individual to work on. And then I like to sit back and then I watch what happens with the collective of the planet. And 2021, we're living in this 5-year energy, which, especially saying at the end of 2020 and into the beginning of this year, speaking on that. And, 5 is a very it's very fierce, it's very disruptive, it's very active, and it's an inherently destructive energy. Now, what we use it as positive destruction, like, not any different than I'm doing a juice cleanse to clear, my liver and get myself vitalized and clear out old sludge and dead matter in my system. But five is so it's when we use it, it's and those of you listening, it's sort of destruction for good. So clearing out the obstacles in your life. What is keeping you held back? Is it your limiting beliefs? Is it maybe an oppressive job, whatever, and not great relationship? We all have the things that are holding us back, but the five gives us that power. It's a sword. So it's really like, where are we going to pick up a sword and kind of liberate ourselves? So that's why I call it the disruptor. I was thinking that so far the year could have been a little more potentially violent on a mass sort of collection, or the collective rather. But there's always violence. I mean, you could tune into it. It just depends what you want to watch in the world. But I think a lot of people are really awakening in their consciousness. And that's really what the five is meant to do. It's meant to awaken and activate. I even did a 5-year workshop, and I described that five energy as an alarm clock. Like, it's just like, boom, it's like time to get up, time to wake up. Let's do your mission. So five is that energy. It's war. Five is the number of war. It's Mars. So this is another thing, how you tie all the strings. You're like, okay, five is the planet Mars. It's the color red. Mars is about warfare, but it's about right action. And then I look at what's the tarot. Well, most people would think that the fifth card is the Hierophant, but actually the fifth card is the Emperor card. And then the Emperor is attributed to Aries, which is ruled by Mars. So Aries is get up and go, and it serves you. So it's an impactful get up and go energy. And it's also the physical body. So great year to get in shape. So if all of your, going to the gym and working out New Year's resolutions haven't come to fruition, it's never too late to start. So just think active. So I think the collective, I don't know. I'm happy it's been less violent than what potentially could have been. But here in America, right as the 5-year began, we have all this crazy stuff at the Capitol, and there's all of this like symbolism in that. A lot of people get so caught up and are just blinded by what they see in the news. And I'm looking back and seeing all the layered symbols and everything that's happening. It was very interesting, but I was like, oh, that's five energy right there. Whether it was, set up or not, and that's a whole other topic, but it still is that energy coming to a head. So, but for me, like, I've used the five energy, like I wanted to get in shape a little bit more, get move, a little more cardio energy. And then just, I probably cleaned through our apartment as many times as we could. I mean, part of that was quarantine last year, but I still was like, there's more. There's another drunk drawer somewhere. So five is the energy of clearing out the drunk drawer. So, so what doesn't serve you, we still have time to work with that. And this, like, you'll see how these numbers go in sequence, because next year we move into the six energy. And six is it's the union of macrocosm and microcosm. It's God and human, right? The original sort of language was God and man, but you have to sort of abstract on all of those. So this is why during the 5-year we want to get rid of the things that hold us back. And that's why we're given this tool of this sword to sort of cut and to clear the way, even if it's just clear the fog of your brain, right? Like the cobwebs in your brain. But we move into a year that is a sort of a more elevated consciousness, and we have more direct access to our knowledge of our true purpose and who we are, and more direct access to our soul, more direct access to divinity and things like that. And it's going to be easier to access that if we cleared away the things that get in the way of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
So the 5 year was prepping us to get rid of, and the 6 year is like, we're going to open up to something much higher. So the 6 consciousness is very prayerful. It's very meditative, things like that. So, and then, I'm already looking, the 6 year prepares us. Then we have the 7 year. 7 is all about prosperity. Well, that's all about prosperity. 6 will be a little bit more of a flow. So it's really interesting to me to watch the collective. We still have half a year to see if, we've definitely seen violence and conflicts escalating once again in Israel and Palestine and things like that. That's been an ongoing thing. I've been surprised as if people just learned about this or something. It's the last, month in the news. But, that's definitely war is a symptom of the 5 energy.
And do you look at the numerology of the month as well, or less?
Yeah. Well, actually, I send out a newsletter at usually the first. Here and there, it's the second if we're running a little behind. But I don't think anybody really notices. Just this is the beginning of the month. I'll look at. So we're just at the end of the 6. We're coming. At least recording this, and we're coming into a 7 energy. Yeah, you absolutely. Things with numerology. This is why I love numerology. This is an official teaching, quote unquote. The first rule of numerology is there are no rules. So you can, sure, you can take that to like an extreme where you're just making things up, but you're allowed to just freeform to some degree. So sure, I have like a data bank in my psyche of a lot of reference points to say about the number 6. But for anybody else, like use whatever the number is. So if it's the number of the month, we're going into a 7 month in July. You can start free associating what are the things that that have to attribute with 7. Maybe you're born on the 7th, or maybe you're born in that month. Like all of that has meaning. But that's what's kind of cool. Like even when I teach, a lot of times people will give me feedback and they'll share something, a reference point that I never would know or think of, and they're just as accurate as I am. And then that broadens sort of my base of places I can go with my psyche. So that's why I always say the process of numerology needs to be meditative and artistic and fluid. And then that practice opens up something higher in your psyche, and you just get deeper answers. Like, why is it I could look at a numerology chart and see that someone would be really fulfilled working in hospice care with people that are dying? Or literally, I looked at this guy's chart and it was all about finance and accounting. And he was like in the middle, wanted to switch careers. And that's what he wanted to do, but he wasn't sure. And I've just seen those things. And there's nothing you're going to look up that says, well, this combination of numbers means accounting, right? Like the number 8 is a good money number, but it doesn't it opened up something in my psyche that allows something higher to come through. But it is handy that I have sort of these general concepts through yoga and Kabbalah, an essence of what that energy and what that number has to tell us. And from there, just you really can go with it. You can take the number 7. Let's say you're born on 7 5 July 5th, or you're in Europe, so it would be the 5th of July. When I do charts for Europeans, or really the rest of the world outside of America, the dates are backwards to me, because we say the month first. And so that's a big difference in a chart. So, but, you can multiply that. You multiply 5 times 7. And that's, for example, what is that? 30, that's 35, right? Yeah. And then 35, you could add that. That's 8. So now all of a sudden, somebody's birthday starts leading you to 8, or you can just add it up. You can multiply. You can play with it. 35, I happen to know as a number and an energy that means the power of God is what it translates in Kabbalah. And you just get to go with it because it's the synchronicity. Numerology really is synchronicity. Synchronicity is the language of destiny, but doing numerology opens up the synchronicity, so you're actually opening up your destiny more. So it's really a meditation above anything else. Or a poetic art form.
Yeah. And
like I have a book coming out.
I know.
And
So
I know a lot of people will be using it as a reference, but I explain in the book, like, take this as a little springboard for your consciousness to leap off of.
okay.
So don't be so literal. If you're like, okay, the number 8 is life force. It's also Mercury, the planet Mercury. Its color is orange and things like that. That's like a good sort of starting point.
Yeah.
And then go with it.
And I always love that, and I love how in your book, and correct me if I'm wrong, obviously, but it's like it's a very, I guess, practical guides for beginners, right? To use numbers in everyday life. So, and I love that. The Virgo in me is, the practical aspect loves that.
Okay, super Virgo. Okay, yeah, Virgo alert. Virgo energy is really good for that. It's got to be practical, but continue.
Yes. And so maybe, and you touched on a few things, how we can use these technologies into our daily lives, really. And I would love, maybe you have some additional, I know, tips or tricks how people can, without, of course, giving away everything in your book, but just what.
Do I even remember what I
wrote? And your book is coming out in November, right? Is that?
Yeah. The official date from the publisher, which I thought was really cool because it's a numerology book, is 11/11.
No way.
But but they didn't. This isn't like a new age book publisher where they were like, all right, we're going to do 11/11. Like, I literally have to email my editor when I first got the contract, and I was like, it's Mercury retrograde, so if I can please sign this after this date. And they were like, they worked with me. They were like, okay, yeah, if that seems better.
Sure, whatever.
So it wasn't, but I feel like that was a good sign that it's like really in a higher alignment, that the numerology book with a not metaphysical publisher, even though they're really cool and they're nice and they get it, what I'm doing, it's 11/11 officially. Although I believe it might be available 11/9 somehow on Amazon. It's already available for pre-sale on Amazon. I didn't even know that.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it hit number 1 bestseller on Amazon. I didn't even know.
Wow.
So it's off to a good start. The cover isn't even up.
Yeah.
The cover's not even up on Amazon. And the title was possibly going to change. But I just figured it was the publisher getting ahead of the game. But it's going to be very practical. There's a saying I like, if it's not practical, it's not spiritual. Otherwise, it's just philosophical puff. And it isn't anything you can use. And my intention with this book is to bring someone from, zero knowledge, they never even heard the word numerology. They could actually go through this book and do a numerology chart. And I'm teaching the way I do it and the way I look at it. And I do thousands of readings. But the other thing is, too, someone who's a, quote, very experienced numerology just is still going to get so much out of this. Because it's also I'm sharing how I work with that in my experience. But also, I actually originally didn't want the title to be Beginner's Guide. And then the more I thought about it, and I also trust my editor and my publishing, they have years and years of experience with this. So they kind of know. And it's been a very good symbiotic relationship with everything. But I was like thinking about it. I'm like, how many numerologists really are out there anyway? I know one other person, and I know of one other person. But technically, I've met them. that do numerology, and I think it's only one of them that really does it even for a living. So if you think you're an experienced numerologist, you will get something out of this book, I promise you.
So what are some practical ways that we can incorporate numerology into our day?
Well, I mean, it's helpful to have some basis in a tradition or a system that explains the sort of ideas and spiritual concepts of the different numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, which is what's in my book. Mm-hmm. And then from there, there's no stopping you. Yes, there's a numerology chart. So you have a soul number and a karma number, mm-hmm. life path number, and things like that. Start messing around with it. But your life path number, for example, which is sort of the most common that a lot of people are familiar with that are in this world, is you take your entire birthday and you add it up. And then you usually add it up so it's a single digit. And then in my tradition, the way I practice and teach, if it's a number 10 or an 11, if it adds up to that, you just keep that number. Yeah. So you just add your whole birthday, including the 4 digit of the year. So, what's let's say I always use a calculator solution. Like you're born July 5th, 1985. I think that if you add all of those individual numbers up, it's 35, and then you add 3 plus 5, and that's 8. So that your life path energy is like this essence. It's your path. Like, what's my path in life? Where I go? What's the direction I go? Well, that gives you a hint of kind of what you could and should be doing, and where and sort of how you get there and how you navigate the world. And then, for example, 8 is the number of the pranic life force, right? So in yoga, we use the term prana, which is like the mystic life force. Chi, and other traditions, the ode force, but it's just life, vitality, and it's infinite life force. And then from there, it's a number that loves to heal. So on some level, it doesn't mean every person with an 8 life path is a healer or doctor, but some level of their energy makes things, it does heal situations. So, but you could look at the month, look at the day. Is it, it's the 25th, so that's a 7 day, but 25 has meaning. Numbers show up constantly. Yeah, constantly. We're seeing them on license plates. We're seeing them in addresses. I was in I loved Iceland because and then certain parts of like Spain where you've been in. Wait, did we meet in Mallorca?
Yes.
Okay. Mallorca has little plaques, so I see a lot of the address numbers. And Iceland, for example, has really clear address numbers on all of the buildings, and it's all in the same sort of font and these little plaques. And I'm always like assessing the numerology of like how I'm going. Yeah. But yeah, numbers, license plates are a big one, especially in Los Angeles, because it's such a city where we're sitting in our car. So even the famous.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say really quick, David Lynch, the famous filmmaker and director and stuff. He utilizes his system of numerology. He talks about, I've seen interviews, and he'll know sometimes if a project is going to get green lit if he sees a sequence of certain numbers.
So cool.
All in license plates.
So that brings me actually to another question, also in terms of repetition of numbers, right? Because there's like, you also mentioned, of course, 1111. It's a very,
oh yeah, people love that one.
But even like seeing like 555 or the triple numbers or even double numbers, what is kind of the energy behind that?
Well, anything triple is more manifest because it involves the number 3. So 3 is the number. It's so to get a little heady with it for a moment. 3 in Kabbalah means the idea of form, and so the concept of the number 3 is when we first have a container in the universe, meaning you have creation, and let's say the first creation was like a dot, and then from that dot came another dot. And if you connect those two dots, you have a line, right? But then once you have a third dot in creation, so the idea is that creation actually came through a series of numbers. And so all of a sudden, you can make a little triangle, and that triangle holds space, it holds a container, right? So that's why it's the idea of form. So that means that anything three really starts to activate manifestation. So if you're seeing a triple number, the one thing you could do is say, okay, 5, which we're talking about, which is like action, it's the sword, it activates, it disrupts, it clears obstacles, it's your alarm clock. Well, it's also a teacher, for example. It's an editor, someone who clears away. Teacher helps you sort of remove obstacles, gets to the truth, right? So we have that energy of times 3 in a way. 3 is making it more real. So it's more manifest. It's more potent that way. Okay. And so I just take the concept of that number. I see so much crap out there that's like super made up, not come from anything. Also, people call those angel numbers. I never even heard that. I've been working with numerology for years, longer than a lot of people that are into it have even been alive, because A, I'm not old, but B, that's just when I really got into it. And so it, it's not angel numbers. I get it. It's kind of catchy, but worst case, even if you have no idea what 7s are about or something, triple numbers are also just a hint of synchronicity, and it sort of confirms you're in an alignment.
Yeah.
But, people, so you kind of, sometimes you can do something called scrying. You scry into a number, which just means you sort of gaze and meditate, allow the answer to come to you. The number symbol itself will tell you something.
Yeah.
We use, if there's one sort of universal language, it is numbers, because you can go anywhere in the world, and even if you don't speak the native language, the numbers are going to be the same.
Yeah, it's true. I was also thinking.
Although I did. Yeah. What?
When I lived in Vancouver, and Vancouver is there's a big Asian community, and one of my first apartments in that building, it was a high rise with I don't know how many floors, but so many floor numbers were actually missing because of the superstition.
Right, like the number 4, I believe,
number
is
4,
one.
And of course 14
as
well, 24, everything with the 4, and then 13 as well.
I guess 13 in our sort of Western, or especially America, I know that they used to not have 13 floors in a lot of buildings. But I have a friend who's Chinese, who's also a client, and sometimes a student. And they were saying that I guess it's that their word, the number 4, and the word for 4, and the word for death sound pretty much identical.
Exactly.
So 4 is like a number of death, which I sort of abstract. I thought that was interesting, because 4 to me is all about heart chakra opening.
Yeah, true.
And so, but in a way, it's like the real heart chakra opening removes your ego. Right,
yeah,
so
that's kind of a death.
On a higher energy, death is a powerful alchemical transmutation and whatnot. So I took it like that. I think 9 is considered a lucky. I knew someone who was buying real estate lots whose addresses all added up to 9, and sold them to Chinese investors. But I don't know. What? Oh, is 8 a good one?
8 is very abundant, or prosperity for Chinese people.
Well, 8 I attribute as to being money, because you take life force. Money is, if you have more life force, you have more vitality, you have more energy, you have more options. Well, in a 3-dimensional realm, that manifests as money. You have more money, you have more vitality in the world. You have more options of places you can go. You have more freedom. It's more infinite. So 8 ties into money too. So you kind of, as you start to work with it, it may not be as obvious on the surface, but when you meditate and you realize these higher concepts of the numbers, and this is where I'm applying mystical Kabbalah, you're like, oh, I see how 4 is a death.
Yeah, totally.
Right, but that's a different notion of death per se,
Yeah.
you know. But yeah, during the 4 year before, and I was talking about the 4 year, but then 2020 was the craziest year in a way we've seen as a planet, right? I mean, there have been, you know, yes, World War I, World War II, all these crazy atrocities, major things like that, but this was still a world collective experience that we've seen. Like we've never quite, I guess, the great, the pandemic of the 1918 or whatever. But, it's very interesting for us and people that are alive now to experience that. So that, like, look at that death, look at, it's
Right.
kind of interesting that, so the Chinese were kind of right, but I also saw it as a different level, and it's also a number of forgiveness. So, if you really think about death in the tarot, the death card's a great liberation.
Yeah, it comes back to what we talked about at the beginning, how when we start looking at it and then you see all these connections everywhere with it, right? And it's so true when you say that numbers are so universal, like compared to language, right? For example.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I feel like every tradition, whether it's a spiritual tradition or every culture, has numbers that are sort of like lucky numbers or unlucky
Totally.
numbers.
Yeah.
Pop culture has it. Most people I know that they're not into numerology or whatever, they kind of have a lucky number. Like everyone kind of has a lucky number. Maybe it's your birthday. Maybe it's the year you graduated high school or college or something. There's always numbers that are significant. So that's numerology right there. So people who have their, like, I don't know if it's a thing in Switzerland, but the United States, I don't think it's as popular, but people would get like a class ring. So they're like, I graduated high school.
Oh,
and then they have a ring. I'm like, what? Like, I was like so done. I wanted to drop out of high school.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need a ring. But that's my experience. But it's a thing in America, this class ring. I was like, who's so into high school that you got to commemorate? Like, I graduated in the year 2000 or whatever. But, whatever people are into, I don't really care. And it makes somebody money that sells class rings. So, kudos them for creating that business. But that number is sort of imprinted there. We make a thing. Everybody kind of remembers the year they graduated things or anniversaries. So
yeah.
I'll do a lot of readings. I'll do like wedding readings, like
Mhm.
consultations. And I always tell people, like, sure, look for the astrology, right? Like there's good astrology for a day to like lock in that commitment of marriage. But ultimately, you're never going to remember the astrology of that day, but you will always remember and know and have significance around your wedding anniversary,
Mhm.
right? So, like, I even know my parents was April 15th. So I was always aware. It's interesting because 15 is the mystical number of 5. 5 is war. My parents argued all the time. And I always think, interesting, they got married on the 15th. Like, my father passed away and my mom has since remarried, but I did the numerology and I was like, 22 would be a really nice day to get married on because it's also a 4. 22 means its own thing, but the 4, you have this, it's a high love, high heart, and it is a surrender. And so I look at those dates, and to me, the number day is more important because you're going to memorialize that day in numbers more than you're going to memorialize, well, that day moon was in Cancer and sun was in Scorpio and Mars was in Leo and blah blah blah. You're never going to remember. Nobody does that. Even astrologers don't do that. You could look back, but you're going to remember I was married, July 22nd or the 18th or whatever the case is. So that's why it's really important on your birthday. Your birthday number, like I was born on the 28th of the month. So when I see 28s everywhere, I resonate with that.
Yeah, that's
not
true.
like, oh, Pluto was in Libra when I was born. Like it.
So in terms of the birthday, do you also look at, or can somebody also look at, for example, we are in, 2021. So then I look at my birthday, September 22nd, 2021, and add those numbers up and see what that meaning is. And that means something for me for
that year. Yeah, totally. Absolutely. And that's what's cool too, is like start playing around, multiply, look at those. You'll start to notice like patterns of numbers, but even with the triple numbers or whatever, sometimes you go around and you just see. I had someone, a dear friend of mine, they always see for years throughout their life the number 511, for example.
interesting, yeah.
So, that's a triple number. You don't think about it, but why is that always showing up for them? And then it happened to also be like their birthday and things like that. So, yeah, keep track. You'll see that there's all these patterns unfolding that are a message for your psyche. Just people aren't always paying attention to it. And then on the extreme, there's definitely some crazies out there that are overly paying attention to it and like always waiting for this sign. I had one guy. Oh, I get this a lot, but like people, if they know me as a numerologist or whatever, this one guy was tracking charts of numbers, and he came up to me, and he had like almost like scrolls in a notebook, and then they were in his phone, and he really wanted a reading, and he was telling me all this stuff, and he was saying that he still lived at home with his dad, but his dad was like this evil vampire who was trying to get him, and he was like a little unstable, and I was like, your number's tracking. He's like, it's not helping. He's like, I really want a reading, but I don't have enough money. I was like, here's your free reading. You need to get a job so you can start making money. You can move out of the house. You're like 35 years old, and you need to get away from this father that you say is a vampire who's trying to undermine your whole existence. It's like, you don't need a numerology reading. Like, you got to get your freaking life together. And so I'll see that extreme where the numbers become madness. But really, when you're awake and you're paying attention and you're noticing the subtle energy, and the thing is, with Kabbalah, I can read numbers through colors. Like at the time we're recording, I'm looking outside my window. I'm sitting in my living room, and there's these beautiful purple flowers as we're talking. So I'm like, oh, purple, yes, number 9, subtle energy, the subconscious, right? So it's 9 is really the number of this interdimensional flow as we're talking. So I'm doing numerology looking at the color of a flower. And then if I really got closer, I could see it actually has 5 petals. So I can get into that. So I can decode it from so many different angles. And that's just through years of working with it,
Yeah.
But if you're going numerology crazy, you might just need a damn job.
No, but I think what's also like a big message for me now, from our talk now, it's also like starting to, the more we get into it, the more we see it. Like, you, of course, because you live it and you breathe it, you see it, you see the purple, you see the number, because of course, you have all this wisdom and knowledge, but you're living it, and the more we get into it, the more then we see it, and then we can learn from what we see, pretty much.
Yeah, 1,000%, and just if you start paying attention a little bit, it really will just start to open up. And then just, be cool about it. I mean, that one guy is a very extreme example, but I definitely see it. I think it's funny because people think I'm probably constantly like, I'm like seeing everything like it's that movie, The Matrix, with the numbers scrolling. And I'm just like, I am aware and I see it, I notice it, but I'm not like that crazy or like OCD or obsessive with it. And
you're pretty
that way, I feel like Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I think I'm grounded and real, and I feel like this way, when I do notice, it's like I know that I'm noticing for a reason. It's just like, I don't know. You probably notice, like, whenever I used to drive a Volkswagen, for example, and when I got that car, I had never had a Volkswagen before. And all of a sudden, all I notice is Volkswagen. Like,
Yeah,
now I'm
totally. That
noticing
totally
that.
happens. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
even now, from having had a Volkswagen in the past, and Gina, my partner, had a Volkswagen as well. Like, I just see them everywhere, and I find myself paying attention to Volkswagens, and I see that logo, and then I'm thinking, oh, Germany, and the Volkswagen logo is actually 666 in numerology, which people think is like, oh, but it actually is a very enlightened energy field. So then I'm like, not even into cars, but I'm noticing the model designs and stuff, and I'm thinking about Volkswagens, which I do like the logo, but and I actually really like that car. But you just start to notice, if I was like, oh, maybe I'll buy a Jeep, I'll start noticing Jeeps everywhere. They've always been there. You just didn't pay attention.
So good. Thank you so much, Remington. This has been amazing. I think we could keep talking, but
Oh yeah, we could go on forever.
we have
I
plans
know
to go to
Gina's
the
like, we're
beach.
going to the beach.
Exactly. I'm gonna
How's the-
let you go to the beach.
Well, I hope to see you in Europe if we don't meet up again in Mallorca, but I really want to go to Switzerland. I've never been. It's one of the spots I really do. I want to prance with the fairies and the elves in the mountains, because there's definitely Davic realms there. And everybody I meet, and I'm totally generalizing, and I do meet high vibe people, but everyone seems like this magical little sprightly being. So I know we have some of the same friends in common, but
Yeah.
it's on the list. And hopefully, I mean, everything's unpredictable with the way COVID and changes and laws, and who knows. But my book comes out in November, and it's supposed to be in England. And then I want to do a little Europe book thing and whatnot. So
Maybe
we will meet again.
Maybe we do a book party in Zurich. Who knows?
I would love that more than anything. So please, let's do it. And I will take basil over parsley.
Amazing.
Parsley has its place, but basil all the way.
But we'll do basil. Thank you so much, Raymond.
Thanks.
Wow. I wish I would have had another 3 hours with Remington. Absolutely mind-boggling and so much fun. I can't wait for his book. And who knows, maybe we'll do a book launch party for him in Zurich. That would be absolutely amazing. You will find the pre-order link in the show notes. Make sure to check out his website, themysticalarts.com, as well as linked into the show notes. And he has a newly podcast as well, which is also very fun and deep. And there is so much wisdom and depth in his work, and at the same time fun and grounded. So thank you so much for being here, for listening in, for also sharing the Life Creation podcast, whether it's this episode or another episode or the podcast altogether. Share it with your friends, your colleagues, your family. Post it on social media and tag me. I will reshare it, and I always love to hear from you, whether it's over these channels or directly, what your takeaways are, your thoughts about this episode or any other. And of course, also if you have any requests or suggestions, I'm always thrilled to hear them. So just go out there, live your life, see numbers, see symbols, and curate your life. Thank you for being here.